to be together in the cool evening. We can really savor it while we have it. That chant that we just did, the Dharma, incomparably profound and minutely subtle. Minutely subtle, pointing to it is not about our ideas. This is not a practice about ideas. Ideas about our life. It's the same as what's often said about, this is not a philosophy. This is really the direct experience that we have the ability to relax deeply into every moment of our life and its minutely subtle dimensions. There's no end to what we can awaken to about our experience when we're not distracted by our thoughts and our beliefs about it, but we're just really directly encountering it. And that includes in the heart space, in the breath, in the body. This is a complete practice of embodiment. Being fully in the body, whatever that body, whatever condition that body is in. So some of you have mentioned recently that you have let go of a habit of daily meditation. Not because you decided to, but just because you forgot about it. You got distracted by all the stuff that's going on. And when this happens, you can notice how busy your mind becomes again with such a lapse of daily meditation. This experience is really, we all have it. It happens. It's not a measure of anything. Draw no conclusions about it or about what your relationship to practice is. So I want to talk about that. And I said this, I kind of titled this talk, Stop and Come Back. Because that's really what it comes down to. Every moment of our life, we can be present and remember to be present. And we drift off into fantasy, reverie, torture thoughts, fantasy, planning, designing. I found that for the years that we were involved in putting together the physical plant of the Zen Center, a lot of my so-called Zazen was actually designing. I was just sitting here designing that corner, or how we should do the back windows, or the millions of details that are involved in building anything, a building, a life. What we wear, what we say, what our relationships are, our careers, our retirement, health. There's no end to what we design and build. So this experience, these lapses in our regular daily practice are nothing to worry about because the antidote is quite simple, which is simply just to start over, to come back, begin. And one period of Zazen at a time is really all we do anyway. If we think that having kind of lost track of our habit is a problem, well, that's an idea. That's a belief. But in and of itself, it's nothing, but we just lost track and we come back. We begin again. This is very simple, and I just want to talk about this very simple situation because I think it has a lot of implications for our willingness to tolerate what can sometimes feel like the tedium of starting over. Even if you've practiced, if you meditated for years, depending on the tumult in the mind, it can be very tedious to sit down and start over. Quieting the body, coming back to the breath. That's one flavor that it can take on. Or it can take on the flavor of profound relief. Stopping. I remember when my kids were little, and I'd get to a sesshin, and the feeling of relief, the profound relief of just sitting down, quiet, and nothing to do. So we can come to this moment of stopping and returning with a lot of different states of mind. And that's really what we get wise to as we practice, is our states of mind and how they color the quality of the experience of any moment. So Zazen delivers us a concentrated dose of being in the in this moment, confronting everything that pops up in the process of stopping and being still, and the road to internal silence, which we don't travel by demand or judgment or anything else, but really by deep interest, curiosity, relaxation. Because we're not producing silence. There's nothing to do. It's what we find, what we discover, what we notice. So much can pop into the field of the mind when we just let it, we follow it. The thinking mind, we follow it. Come on, there are chairs right here, closer. Anybody else who wants to move in a little closer? Every week we set this up a little differently because we confront different situations. So stopping and starting over at any moment is the practice. We stop our fixation on some thought or other, or some fantasy or memory. So fixation is another thing that we notice about the mind, the quality of fixation, the stickiness. And you may have some favorite thoughts, either positive or negative. You know, I call the negative ones torture thoughts. There are certain torture thoughts. And they stick. They stick as long as you don't notice. And so the trance of ordinary life seems really dense and real. The trance of this ordinary mind that's so busy and thinking and planning. But then we take up Zazen practice and come back to the continuous flow in one thing after another. You know, sometimes we say, when we're really like up to here with challenges in our everyday life, we say, one thing after another. And that is the truth of it. in the conditions, in the situations in our life, but also it's just true. You know, the forms in the mind we can call a thing. The forms in the mind become a thing when we get fixated. And before then, it's just part of a flow, kind of the color flow. We can notice the nature of everything, of each thing, each form, as brief and impermanent and conditioned by all other forms. It's so much fun when you really discover the character of a thought. When you notice a thought, and you don't get caught up in it, you don't get caught up in the narrative, but it just comes and goes. And also, thoughts just pop in. I mean, sometimes thoughts come up and you think, where'd this come from? Who thought this thought? Maybe I'm thinking somebody else's thoughts, and actually that happens sometimes if you have that experience of saying the same thing at the same time with somebody. You know, that thought just popped up. So we can notice the nature of each thing, each form as brief, impermanent, and conditioned by all other forms. Thoughts are like, and one Zen master I was studying said there's like snowflakes in the air that dissolve instantly when placed on a red-hot stove. The red-hot concentration of direct awareness in Zazen. In Zazen or at any time. Anytime. This is what we investigate. We investigate it in Zazen because when we're in Zazen, there's no other business that we have to attend to. But Zazen is actually, we don't have a different mind in Zazen that we have the rest of the time. But when we sit Zazen with the Sangha, regularly sitting Zazen, we can tap a treasure house. We are more likely to tap what lies fundamental in consciousness. So what are the forms that make up your experience? I want to talk about forms. Because a thought is a form, a thought form. The form of thought, and also what are the forms that make up the self that has thoughts, that has experience? What are the forms that make up this sense of self? That's just incredibly interesting to investigate when you're sitting there. You know, we put words to it as a method. Some of the words are who, or who is this, or what is this, just to remind us. But the words are just the words, and then we have to take awareness itself directly into the experience, and that is endlessly open. But we have to be really slowed down to do that. Be willing to really relinquish any thought. And that's a big deal. It's not the same as being willing to pay the toll at the toll booth. Being willing to, I don't know, sweep the sidewalk. It's different. Being willing to relinquish thinking. And so that's why we have the method in Zazen of following the breath or counting the breath. So rather than saying, give it up, give it up, give it up, we say, no, pay attention totally to this one thing. And this one thing can be anything, but breath is particularly wonderful because it's just always right here with us, if we're lucky. We don't have COVID. Or listening is another one. I mean, there are endless practices we can use. So this is what we investigate, this mind. We're always stepping into the middle way between what is just now, what isn't any longer, and what hasn't happened yet. When we're involved in thinking, we have this sense of time and progression. But even when we're sitting Zazen and we are pretty quiet and concentrated, there is no now. There's always this flow. I think people who pursue Zen have to be a certain kind of person. I sometimes think that, you know, there's only a certain temperament that is moved to look this specifically and deeply into the source, the ground of experience. So, looking at the flow nature of awareness is always, in fact, beginning again and again and again and again. It's just always new, open and unknown. I think of the experience. I live right by a marsh, which is very quiet. And sometimes in the middle of the night, I mean, I often meditate at night, it's completely silent. And then the voice of some creature, somebody out there, some creature says something. It's a sentient creature because it's expressing something very specific, but I don't know who it is and what they're saying. But out of the silence comes this voice. And I think that just demonstrates the openness of awareness. We don't even notice the openness usually in the usual run of things. But when we start to take a look, as we do in Zazen, each moment, this is really right there, right before our very eyes, this never before and never again quality. So you might have an idea about what Zazen is. And some of these ideas really persist. They're deep old habits because they're thoughts, they're beliefs, they're images, they're archetypal images, which are very old and deep and inspiring often, very inspiring. So you may have an image about Zazen, which includes actual image in the mind. So you know when you do Zazen, you're going to sit like all the statues you've seen of Buddha, and with a very stern demeanor, serious or peaceful. And actually, there are certain teachings that say you sit with a little smile. Well, that's a method. But it can be very distracting, actually, or not. So all of this is wide open. It's really good to try a lot of methods because we learn everything, all these different things that we learn as we try different methods. So there we are, sitting like a Buddha, exerting great muscular effort to hold still. An effort that oddly squeezes in on the sense of easeful breath and may even leave you holding your breath. That's something that I did for years, actually. I don't know if anybody else is that misled, but I was. All the while thinking about something else. And sometimes you're holding, you just look so good. It's like people, especially when you're new in a Zendo, and all these people are sitting there, and you're thinking, I don't know what I'm doing, and this is ridiculous, and I can't sit, and my mind's crazy, but look at all of these people. They're so quiet and absorbed. Yeah, maybe not. It's just the difference between appearance and experience. Right? So much for our own judgments, our own assessments. So trying to do Zazen is absolutely necessary. You know, we have to have the intention, And we need to keep at it. We really need to keep at it. But the trying itself isn't going to help that feeling of pushing. Rather, as Suzuki Roshi recommends, we cultivate constancy of attention, which means starting over, starting again, starting again, starting again. Because Zazen actually asks us to relax into natural stillness, natural, quiet alert. If you see babies, they go into quiet alert. They're completely present, completely open. And we get absorbed into that. I mean, the thing about still is when you're really absorbed, there is no motivation to move. There's nothing separate pushing or moving. You know, you're just still into it. Although I want to say that there are times when you can be very, very very still, very absorbed, and there'll be a jolt of energy will go through the body, or a wave of energy will go through the body, chi. But that happens on its own. It's not that we're taking a stance for or against anything. We don't leap into thought, we don't judge thoughts, we don't push them. We don't cherish them, hold on to them. We don't grab onto so that they become an object. And often we forget to stop. We forget where we are. Sometimes that goes for a whole period of Zazen where you suddenly realize, oh wow, I'm on the cushion in the Zendo. And I've been absorbed in something that happened 1,000 miles away 40 years ago. So we don't want to cultivate spending all of our time in Zazen in thought. But you know, that takes persistence and our own discovery of what that means. And how many hours of the day are devoted to thought? And how many hours of the day are devoted to resting that very mind in the present moment only? So I use that particular thought to appreciate my ability to have regular Zazen periods in my day. You know, it's a step towards sanity, a step towards being fully human, really alive. Resting the mind in this breath is a method that helps us. It helps us hold steady in awareness right here, in flow. When I was preparing this, I thought of Huineng, who was the sixth ancestor, who, by the way, was a lay person, not an ordained person, for those who are caught up in that question about how important it is. He was the sixth ancestor. He was illiterate, and he woke up to his true nature when he heard a monk reciting a line from the Diamond Sutra that says, let your mind flow without dwelling on anything, which is what we've been talking about here, huh? And he recognized that immediately. And so what happened for him was, it's not that he woke up, but that he was confirmed in what he already knew. He already knew this state. It's like saying, yes, appreciate this. The mind flowing without dwelling on anything. So when he arrived at the monastery of Master Hongren, he was sent to work in the kitchen as a rice pounder. I guess that was a particular job that some people did. They pounded the rice for the rice porridge. And I just picture him pounding the rice, being completely absorbed in pounding the rice. I'm just sharing that with you. That was a moment in my day. Just picturing. Huineng. And here we are 1,300 years later, and many thousands of miles away, developing the same practice, appreciating the same practice. And at some point, we don't even need a method. When we discover that the mind of Zazen, we don't need a method particularly, unless we're really busy. We can just go directly to it. Once you discover this original, intimate, most intimate place, everybody who discovers it says, "Oh yes, I recognize this. Now I remember. Now I remember. I forgot for a whole lifetime this state of mind. Now I remember." So much of the teachings are pointing out devices. They're confirming words. But words can either give life or take it away. That's one of the Zen things that is said. And we want to hear the teachings always, looking into how does this resonate with my own experience, which is exactly what the Buddha urged everybody to do. You know, discover your own light. Let the light shine within. So just one last little theme about the pandemic conditions, the condition of uncertainty that we're all living with. It's one reason why we're outside. We were going to start meeting in the Zendo, but clearly that's probably not yet a good idea. But this is okay. This is kind of nice as long as the weather holds. It's lovely. So depending on our source of information, though, we are now discovering that we may be more vulnerable and in need of greater caution than we knew even a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And we're knowing that if you got vaccinated in March, your 6 months is kind of coming to an end. So there's a lot of questions suddenly. Again, we are again reminded by this pandemic of so many things that are always true, but we forget that everything is uncertain all the time, and also that there's so much more that going on than we are ever aware of at any moment, that it's going to deeply affect us. So one of the things that the pandemic has done I think of it as a beautiful prompt for practice, to open to uncertainty, to open to the unknowable, to stop and open all the gates of the heart and of the senses, of the mind. So practicing during this pandemic is a great demonstration of the value of maintaining a steady practice of Zazen and knowing a stable mind, because this practice helps us develop stability, grounded in open awareness and the commitment to be of service. Each day, once or twice, returning to openness and ease, no matter how complicated our lives are and how distracted we are. We come back to calming the system. Even if you never get to quiet mind, you will notice that if you sit for a half hour, you're a lot calmer than you were when you started, even if you never let go of thought. So we relax the heart-mind muscle and allow us to bring the body of Samantabhadra into the world anew. And I want to just talk for a minute about Samantabhadra. the bodhisattva of enlightening activity. Samantabhadra is associated, it's one of the bodhisattvas that is always pictured with Manjushri and Buddha. They are a triad, iconographically. And all of them together embody awareness of emptiness, of openness, of flow, of possibility. The unity of appearances and openness. You hear this word emptiness. It actually means openness or fullness. And the nature of mind and natural clarity with unceasing compassion. So this is the nature of the mind of Zazen. Stopping and coming back again and again, beginning again, is our practice. Beginning again. We can't take anything for granted. And how fortunate we are to have received a spiritual tradition that prompts us to continue to be open and warm-hearted, to continue to grow, be curious, and not take our opinions as reality. Although I certainly like mine. So does everybody, and that's when we start fighting. That the characteristic of an opinion is just like. So renewing the wholesome habit of daily Zazen, practicing with a Sangha whenever you can, participating in day-long retreats, and the adventure of Sesshin, which is a longer retreat, all support and sustain a bright and clear life. Regular, steady Zazen strengthens the heart-mind muscle. And the support for this is one gift that a Sangha offers us, that a Sangha offers its members and also the world through us. We all share this one life. We all wake up together, and we all begin again together. And so may we all remember to continually begin again. Thank you.